Hey there, in this video, I just want to give an overview of the mediation path analysis module that we're going to be discussing this week. Everybody should read the chapter in the Darlington and Hayes book on mediation and path analysis. That should be our first thing we read. Also, be sure to check out the Barron and this link to the Barron and Kinney method. The link here will take you to this website. The Barron and Kinney method is probably one of the most frequently used methods to assess indirect effects and to estimate a path analysis model in a regression sense. So this would be a good introduction into it. The Darlington and Hayes chapter kind of talk about it. But you may even want to even just start with this section as well, because it's kind of a shorter, maybe a simpler overview, and then the Darlington and Hayes book goes into a little more detail. If you want just even more, like you're not quite understanding what Darlington and Hayes are saying over there, the Pederser book has a good introduction into path analysis. They're chapter 18, which it sort of follows more along the Barron and Kinney method in the Pederser book. You can find it in the introduction module down here to the Pederser text if you're wanting that reading. I've added on here some helpful macros and resource guides. So this first one is just the syntax file. This was a macro that I wrote that calculates the Monte Carlo confidence intervals for indirect effects. And I show you the little bit of syntax in the syntax starter guide too. But if you want to just use the insert file command, just insert this Monte Carlo syntax and then just give the macro commands to run it, you can do that too. We're also going to use the process macro from the Darlington and Hayes book. So I've saved it out here so you can just save it to a place on your computer, and we're just going to call it again in our syntax file. They talk a little bit in the chapter about how to use the process macro, and I'll kind of walk you through it too in the activity as well. Here is a helpful guide on using the process macro. Hayes has his own textbook on an entire textbook on mediation and path analysis, and in it he describes this process macro and kind of how to use it. And so I've kind of copied the appendix from that text here to give you more details about using the process macro, but I'll walk you through it in the activity for what we're doing. You can see here's the where I've copied the appendix where it kind of walks you through the macro there. Here's the website. So here's just the website for the process macro. If you want to find out kind of more about it, you can read through the website here. I've included just an example article. This was an article I wrote back in grad school that was subsequently published, where I used a path analysis. So if you want to see how I wrote up a path analysis, I've given you a link to the article here, so you can see kind of just an example path analysis article there. And then, our path analysis mediation activity is saved here. Here's the all the activity information. And I'll make another video where we'll walk through part of the activity together. We're going to use the same high school and beyond data set that we used in the missing data module and that we used in the interaction effects module. Here's another link to the process macro, and here's your syntax starter guide that should get you started on the mediation activity. And then I've also provided some syntax here. If you wanted to estimate path models, you can also estimate these using structural equation modeling programs. And so I've done that. If you're familiar with the software package R and the Laban package, I provided some syntax for running path analyses in an SEM package. That's the package I prefer to do structural equation models. If you take the advanced measurement course, we'll talk a lot more about using the Laban package, and we'll do that entire course actually in the R software. So just a little plug for that course is offered in will be offered in the fall. I've also provided an example write-up, example write-up sections. So you can see here, here's an example where I've written up like regression diagnostics, how you might write up results from your regressing diagnostics. You know, you end up running a lot of different analyses for when you, you know, are assessing kind of the tenability of the assumptions of the regression model, and then you only end up typing out like 3 or 4 sentences about the thing. So you can see how I would write up the results of regression diagnostics here, where I had violations of heteroscedasticity, what I might say in the write-up. Here's how I might, include a write-up where I excluded some outlying individuals. Here's an example write-up for the interaction effects. If you look at moderation activity number 3 on that activity, that's how I wrote up the results of that analysis. You can see that there. And then the same thing, there's the figure. And here's the same thing for our path analysis mediation activity. So for number 4 on this activity, here's how I would write up the results of that analysis. So all that's available on Canvas as well. You can see that here. Don't forget the homework assignment for the regression, and for all of our regression modules. It's available here. You can see here's our the homework file. You can work in groups on it if you want to. I know things are a little bit chaotic now that we've moved completely online for the rest of the semester. So if you need a little bit more time with these activities, that's okay. Just let me know. You can have it. There won't be any penalty or anything like that. But after this module, you should be able to do everything that's on the assignment. I think the last question here is a path analysis. So everything else you should be able to do by now. This activity shouldn't be as long as the first homework assignment. It's probably about the same length as homework assignment 2. Don't hesitate to reach out to me if you have questions about the homework or questions about the activity. I'm always here to help. So the last thing I wanted to point out that was in the modules is it's actually above here. I added an additional modules. Someone last year had a question about, well, how do we treat ordinal variables in an OLS regression analysis? And it's a good question. There's no direct answer to that. It sort of depends. The 2 most common options is you can just treat the ordinal variable as if it was continuous and just model it and just enter it in the model as if it was continuous. The other main option is to treat it as if it was categorical. So you could dummy code it. You could use sequential coding. You could use some of the different coding schemes we talked about in the last module. So I just made this is an optional thing. If you're just interested in various ways you can treat ordinal variables in regression models, whoops, it's just a syntax file. I created this little syntax file here where I sort of walk you through different things you can do. Here, we're using the same high school and beyond data set that we were using in the moderation and mediation activities. We're creating an ordinal variable from our reading variable. And then here's different ways we might go about assessing whether, how we should treat it. So you can kind of follow along in the syntax. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer it. This is kind of just, you know, for your information kind of thing. None of this will be on the homeworks or anything. It's just my thoughts on how to treat ordinal predictor variables. So that's sort of an overview of what's going on in this module. I'm going to make a separate video where I'm going to walk through some of the activity with you, but I'll leave the rest of the activity for you to complete on your own. If you want to work in groups in the activity and the homework, that's still perfectly fine. I know it may be a little more challenging since we're not meeting face-to-face anymore. But it shouldn't be too hard to implement virtually if that's what you want to do. You have the option of how you'd like to complete the activities. And like I said, I have due dates set on these. Like this one's due April 6th. If you need more time, that's okay. Just let me know. Again, none of the activities here are graded. As long as you do the activity, you'll get complete credit on the activity. If anything doesn't make sense, you have questions like, what am I asking? What's going on? You know, shoot me an email. I'll be happy to clear up any confusion. If you're not understanding what's going on, you can make a comment in the, when you submit your Word document or your syntax file, make a comment in one of those, and I'll try to explain what's going on there as well too. I'm happy to meet with you via Zoom. We can talk through any issues or problems you're having. Just let me know. Thank you. Talk to you later.